The greatest commandment, doing unto others what we would want them to do unto us. The parable of the creditors and debtors.
The Pharisees, having learned that he had shut the mouths of the Sadducees, gathered together. And one of them, a doctor of the law, came to him to ask him this question in order to test him. Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Jesus answered him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And this is the second, which is similar to it. You shall love your neighbor as yourselves. All the law and the prophets are contained in these two commandments. Matt 22:34-40. Do unto men everything you would want them to do unto you, for such is the law and the prophets. Matt 7:12. Treat all men just as you would want them to treat you. Luke 6:31. The kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And having begun to do so, one was presented to him, who owed him 10,000 talents. But since he did not have the means to repay them, his master ordered him, his wife, his children and everything he owned to be sold in order to satisfy the debt. The servant, throwing himself at his feet, begged him, saying, Lord, have a little patience and I will repay you the full sum. Then the servant's master was touched with compassion, allowed him to go and forgave his debt. However, having barely left, the servant met one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He took him by the throat, and nearly strangling him, said to him, Pay me what you owe. His fellow servant threw himself at his feet and begged him, saying, Have a little patience and I will repay you the full sum. But the other did not want to listen to him, and upon leaving, had him put in prison to be kept there until he paid him what he owed. When his other fellow servants saw what had happened, they were extremely upset and informed their master about everything that had occurred. Then the master had the first servant brought to him and said, You wicked servant, I exempted you from all that you owed me because you begged me. Thus shouldn't you also have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? And the master, enraged, handed him over to the jailers until he paid everything he owed. It is thus that my Father who is in heaven will treat you if from the bottom of your hearts you do not forgive your brother for the wrongs he has committed against you. Matt 18:23-35.
Loving one's neighbor as oneself, doing unto others what we would want them to do unto us is the most complete expression of charity there is, because it sums up all our duties toward our neighbor. One could not have a surer guide in this respect than taking as a measure the commandment that one should do unto others what one desires for oneself. By what right would one demand from one's fellow beings better behavior, more indulgence, benevolence, and dedication than what one shows toward them? The practice of these maxims leads to the destruction of selfishness. When people finally take them as a rule for their conduct and as a foundation for their institutions, they will understand true fraternity and will enable peace and justice to reign among them. There will be neither hatred nor dissension, but only unity, harmony, and mutual benevolence.
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Then the Pharisees, having gone out, decided amongst themselves to ensnare him in his own words. Thus they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians to say to him, Master, we know that you are truthful and that you teach the way of God through the truth, without regard for whomever one might be, because you do not take into consideration men's positions. So tell us your opinion on this. Should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? Jesus, however, knowing their malice, said to them, You hypocrites, why are you testing me? Show me the coin we use for the tax. And having presented him with a denarius, Jesus said to them, Whose image and inscription is this? Caesar's, they said to him. Then Jesus answered them, Then render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Having heard him speak like this, they marveled at his response, and leaving him, they went away. Matt 22:15-22, Mark 12 verses 13-17.
The question posed to Jesus was motivated by the fact that the Jews dreaded the tax imposed on them by the Romans and thus had made it into a religious issue. A large political party had been formed to repeal the tax. The payment of the tax was thus a current matter of outrage for them. Otherwise, the question they put to Jesus, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not, would not have made any sense. The question was a trap, because, depending on his response, they hoped to incite either the Roman authorities or the Jewish dissidents against him. But Jesus, knowing their malice, eluded the problem and gave them a lesson in justice by telling them to pay to each what was owed. This maxim, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's," should not be understood in a restrictive and absolute manner. Like all Jesus' teachings, it is a general principle summed up in a practical and usual form and deduced from a particular circumstance. This principle is a consequence of the one that suggests acting toward others as we would want them to act toward us. It condemns all physical or moral harm caused to others and any violation of their interests. It prescribes respect for others' rights, just as each one desires his or her own rights to be respected. It extends to the fulfillment of duties contracted toward family, society, and authorities as well as toward individuals.
The Spirit's teachings. The law of love.
Love summarizes Jesus' doctrine in its entirety because it is the sentiment par excellence, and the sentiments are the instincts raised to the height of the degree of progress accomplished. At their origin, humans have only instincts. More advanced and corrupted, they have only sensations. More educated and purified, they have sentiments. The exquisite apex of sentiment is love, not love in the ordinary sense of the term, but that inner sun that condenses and joins at its ardent focal point all superhuman aspirations and revelations. The law of love replaces the personality with the union of all beings and extinguishes societal misery. Happy are they who, overcoming their human nature, love with a great love their brothers and sisters in suffering. Happy are they who love, for they know neither the anguish of the soul nor of the body. Their feet are light and they live as though transported outside themselves. When Jesus spoke the divine word love, it made people tremble, and martyrs, inebriated with hope, descend into the arena. Spiritism in turn has come to speak a second word of the divine alphabet. Pay attention, for that word lifts the headstones from the empty graves. Reincarnation, which, triumphing over death, reveals to astonished people their intellectual heritage. This word no longer leads them to torment, but to the conquest of their own being, elevated and transfigured. Blood redeemed the spirit, and today the spirit must redeem people from matter. I stated that, at their origin, humans had only instincts. Therefore, those in whom the instincts dominate are closer to their starting point than to their goal. In order to advance towards the goal, they must overcome the instincts for the sake of the sentiments, that is, perfect the sentiments while dominating the latent seeds of matter. The instincts are the germination and the embryos of sentiment. They bring with them progress, just as the acorn contains the oak, and less advanced individuals are those who, ridding themselves very slowly, only little by little of their cocoon, remain enslaved to their instincts. The spirit must be cultivated like a field. All future wealth depends on today's labor, and much more besides earthly goods. Labor will bring you glorious elevation. It is then that, comprehending the law of love that unites all beings, you shall find in it the sweet joys of the soul, which are preludes to the joys of heaven.
Lazare, Paris, 1862.
Love is the divine essence, and from the smallest to the greatest, you possess in the depths of your hearts the flame of that sacred fire. It is a fact that you have been able to prove over and over again. The vilest individual, the most abject, the most criminal, holds for another person or some object a living and ardent affection impervious to anything that could diminish it, often reaching sublime proportions. I said for another person or some object, because amongst you there are individuals who spend the treasures of the abundant love in their hearts on animals, plants, and even physical objects, misanthropes, of sorts, who complain about humankind in general and resist the natural inclinations of their soul, which seeks affection and sympathy outside itself. They reduce the law of love to the level of instinct. But no matter what they do, they will be unable to repress the living seed that God planted in their hearts at their creation. This seed develops and grows with morality and intelligence, and although constrained by selfishness, it is the source of the holy and kind virtues which generate sincere and lasting affections, and which help you to travel the rugged and arid course of human existence. There are some to whom the trial of reincarnation is repugnant because it implies that others take part in the affectionate relationships of which they are jealous. Poor brothers and sisters, it is your affection that has made you selfish. Your love is confined to a closed circle of relatives and friends, and nobody else matters to you. Well, in order to practice the law of love as God intended it, you must progressively arrive at loving all your brothers and sisters indiscriminately. The task will be long and difficult, but it shall be accomplished. God wills it, and the law of love is the first and most important precept of your new doctrine, because it is what will someday kill selfishness under any form in which it may appear, because, besides personal selfishness, there is also family, caste, and national selfishness. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourselves." Now, what is the extent of one's neighbor? Family, sect, nation? No. It is the whole of humankind. On more highly evolved worlds, it is the mutual love that harmonizes and guides the advanced spirits who inhabit them, and your planet, destined for impending progress by means of social transformation, will see its inhabitants practice this sublime law, the reflection of the divinity. The effects of the law of love are the moral betterment of the human race and happiness during earthly life. The most rebellious and the meanest shall reform themselves when they see the benefits produced by practicing this. Do not do unto others what you would not want them do unto you. On the contrary, do unto them all the good that is within your ability. Do not believe in the sterility and hardness of the human heart. In spite of itself, it yields to true love. Love is a magnet that it cannot resist, and contact with love enlivens and fertilizes the seeds of the virtue that lies latent within your hearts. As a dwelling place of trial and exile, the earth will then be purified by that sacred fire, and will see the practice of charity, humility, patience, devotion, self-denial, resignation, and sacrifice, all virtues that are the offspring of love. So, do not tire of hearing the words of John the Evangelist. You know that when infirmity and old age suspended the course of his preaching, he did nothing but repeat these sweet words, "My little children, love one another." Dear brothers and sisters, take advantage of these lessons. Practicing them is difficult, but the soul will derive immense good from them. Believe me, put forth the sublime effort that I ask of you. Love one another, and you will see earth very soon transformed and made into an Elysium, where the souls of the righteous will come to enjoy repose.
Fenelon, Bordeaux, 1861.
My dear co-disciples, the spirits present here tell you through my voice, love much so that you may be loved. This thought is so truthful that in it you will find everything that consoles and assuages the hardships of each day. Better still, by practicing this wise maxim, you will rise so far above matter that you will spiritualize yourselves before your earthly decease. Having developed within you the understanding of the future, Spiritist studies provide you with a certainty, your ascension towards God, with all the promises that respond to your soul's aspirations. You must also uplift yourselves high enough to judge things without the constraints of matter, and not condemn your neighbor before having directed your thought toward God. In the deepest sense of the word, to love means being loyal, honest, and conscientious in order to do unto others what you would want done unto you. It means searching around yourselves for the inner meaning of all the hardships that oppress your brothers and sisters, so that you may bring them relief. It means regarding the great human family as one's own, because you will meet this family in a certain time on more advanced worlds, and the spirits who compose that family are, like yourselves, children of God destined to evolve forever. That is why you must not refuse your brothers and sisters what God has freely given you, because you, on your part, will be very happy if your brothers and sisters give you what you need. So, always offer a word of hope and support to all who suffer, so that you may be wholly loving and righteous. Believe that these wise words, love much, so that you may be loved, will open the way for you. They are revolutionary and follow a steady and invariable course. But you have already gained much, you who listen to me. You are infinitely better than you were 100 years ago. You have changed so much for your own good that you have accepted without complaint a multitude of new ideas concerning liberty and fraternity, which you rejected before. And in another 100 years you will easily accept ideas that as yet have not been able to enter your minds. Now that the Spiritist movement has taken such a big step, you can see how quickly the ideas of justice and renewal contained in the Spirit's dictations are being accepted by the average intellectual world. This is because such ideas respond to everything divine within you. It is because you have been prepared by a fertile seed, that of the past century 26, which implanted within society the great ideas of progress. And since everything is linked together under the orders of the Most High, all lessons received and accepted will be contained in that universal exchange of love for one's neighbor. Through it, incarnate spirits, judging and sensing things more fully, will join hands throughout the confines of your planet. They will join with each other to understand and love one another, to destroy all injustices and all the causes of misunderstanding among peoples. The grand concept of renewal through Spiritism, described so well in the Spirit's book, will produce the great miracle for the century to come, the uniting of all humankind's material and spiritual interests through the full understanding and application of this maxim. Love much, so that you may be loved.
Sanson, former member of the Parisian Spiritist Society, 1863.
Selfishness, that plague on humankind, must disappear from the earth, whose moral progress it hinders. To Spiritism, the task is reserved of enabling Earth to ascend in the hierarchy of worlds. Thus, selfishness is the target at which all true believers must aim their weapons, their strength and their courage. I say their courage, because more courage is needed to overcome oneself than to overcome other people. Let all of you, therefore, make every effort to fight selfishness within you, for that monster that devours all minds, the child of pride, is the source of all the miseries of this world. It is the negation of charity, and consequently, the greatest obstacle to human happiness. Jesus has given you the example of charity, Pontius Pilate, that of selfishness, for while the righteous one was about to walk the holy stations of his martyrdom, Pilate washed his hands, saying, "What is this to me? This is a righteous man. Why do you want to crucify him?" Nonetheless, he let him be led to his execution. It is to this antagonism between charity and selfishness, it is to the invasion of the human heart by this leprosy, that Christianity owes the fact that it has not completed its entire mission. It is upon you, new apostles of the faith and whom the high-order spirits enlighten, that the job and duty of uprooting that evil has fallen, so as to give Christianity all its power and to clear the way of the obstacles that hinder its forward progress. Uproot selfishness from the earth so that earth can ascend the scale of worlds, for the time has come for humankind to don the toga of manhood, and to do so, you must first uproot selfishness from your hearts.
Emmanuel, Paris, 1861.
If people were to mutually love one another, charity would be practiced more perfectly. However, for this to happen, You would have to make an effort to free yourselves of that breastplate covering your hearts so that you may be more sensitive to those who suffer. Hardness kills good sentiments. Christ never rebuffed anyone. All those who came to him, no matter who, were never rejected. The adulterous woman and the criminal were both helped by him. He never feared that his own reputation would suffer because of it. So, when will you take him as the model for all your actions? If charity were to reign on earth, evil would no longer have predominance. It would flee in shame. It would hide itself because everywhere it would find itself out of place. That is when evil would disappear. You can be sure of it. Start by making an example of yourselves. Be charitable toward everybody indiscriminately. Make an effort not to pay any attention to those who regard you with disdain, and leave to God the burden of all justice, because each day in his kingdom he separates the wheat from the tares. Selfishness is the negation of charity. Now, without charity there will be no peace for society. I would state further that there will be no safety. With selfishness and pride, which walk hand in hand, life will always be a pathway for the shrewdest, a conflict of interests in which the holiest affections are trampled on, where not even the sacred ties of family are respected.
Pascal, Sens, 1862.
Faith and charity.
My dear children, not long ago I told you that charity without faith is not enough to maintain among people a social order capable of making them happy. I should have said that charity is impossible without faith. Actually, you can find generous impulses even among persons who do not have a religion, but that austere charity that is practiced only through self-denial, through a continual sacrifice of all selfish interests, can occur only if there is faith to inspire it, for nothing except faith can enable us to bear the cross of this life with courage and perseverance. Yes, my children, it is in vain that, eager for gratification, people delude themselves about their destiny in this world by pretending that it is permissible for them to concern themselves solely with their own happiness. Of course, God has created us to be happy in eternity. Meanwhile, earthly life ought to be used exclusively for our moral improvement, which is easier to accomplish with the help of the physical organs and the material world. Without taking into account the ordinary ups and downs of life, the diversity of your tastes, your tendencies, and your needs, earthly life is also a way of perfecting yourselves by practicing charity, for it is only through mutual concessions and sacrifices that you can maintain harmony among such diverse elements. You would be correct, however, in stating that people are meant to be happy in this world if they would seek happiness not in material pleasures but in the good. The history of Christianity tells of martyrs who went joyfully to their deaths. In order to be Christians in your society today, neither death by martyrdom nor the sacrifice of your life is needed, but only and merely the sacrifice of your selfishness, pride, and vanity. You shall triumph if charity inspires you and if faith upholds you.
A Protector Spirit, Krakow, 1861.
Charity toward criminals.
True charity is one of the most sublime teachings that God has given to the world. Complete fraternity ought to exist among the true disciples of his doctrine. You must love unfortunates and criminals as God's creatures, to whom forgiveness and mercy will be granted if they repent, as is the case with you for the wrongs that you commit against his law. Regard yourselves as more reprehensible and guilty than those to whom you refuse forgiveness and commiseration, because quite often they do not know God as you do, and less will be asked of them than of you. Do not judge, do not judge, my dear friends, for the judgment you render will be more severely applied to you, and you have need of indulgence for the sins you continually commit. Do you not know that there are many acts that are crimes in the eyes of the God of purity, but which the world does not even regard as light offenses? True charity does not consist only in the alms you give or even in the consoling words with which you might accompany them. No, this is not what God demands of you. The sublime charity taught by Jesus also consists in the benevolence always granted in all things toward your neighbor. You can even exercise this sublime virtue on many individuals who do not need alms, but whose words of love, consolation, and encouragement will lead to the Lord. I will say once more that the times are near when widespread fraternity will reign on this globe. The law of Christ is what will govern humans, and that law alone will be the restraint and hope that will lead souls to the blessed realms. Thus, love one another as children of the same Father. Do not set up differences between you and those who are unfortunate, for God wills for everyone to be equal. Therefore, despise no one. God allows great criminals to dwell amongst you to serve you as a lesson. Soon, when people have been led to the true laws of God, such lessons will no longer be needed, and all impure and rebellious spirits will be relegated to lower worlds according to their inclinations. You owe to those of whom I speak the help of your prayers, that is true charity. You do not have to say of criminals, they are wretched, they must be expunged from the earth. The death that is inflicted on them is too kind for that type of individual. No, you must not speak like that. Look at your model, Jesus. What would he say if he saw such unfortunate persons next to him? He would grieve for them, he would regard them as truly needy, sick persons, and would extend his hand to them. You cannot do this in reality, but you can at least pray for them and assist their spirits in the few moments that they still must spend on your earth. Repentance may touch their hearts if you pray with faith. They are your neighbors just as the best individuals are, like yours. Their wandering and rebellious souls were created to become perfect. So help them out of their quagmire and pray for them.
Elizabeth of France, Le Havre, 1862.
Should we risk our life for a criminal?
A man is in danger of death. In order to save him, one must risk one's own life. However, it is known that he is a criminal, and that if he escapes death, he will be able to commit more crimes. In spite of this fact, should one risk one's life to save him? This is a very serious question, one that a spirit naturally could face. I will respond in accordance with my moral advancement, since the issue is whether or not one should risk one's life for a criminal. Devotion is blind. One lends aid to an enemy. Therefore, one must also lend aid to an enemy of society, a criminal, in other words. Do you think that you will only tear this criminal away from death? Perhaps it will be his entire past life. Consider the possibility that, in those quick instants that drag the final minutes of life from him, this lost man returns to his past life, or rather, his past life arises before him. Death, perhaps, is coming too soon for him. Reincarnation could be terrible. So rush to his aid. You, whom the Spiritist science has enlightened, rush to him and snatch him from his condemnation, and then perhaps the person who would have died cursing you will instead throw himself into your arms. You should not ask yourselves, however, if he is going to do so or not. Just go to his aid, because in saving him you obey that voice of the heart that tells you, you can save him, so save him.
Lamennais, Paris, 1862.